Hey, another edition of Dolphins Today starts right now. Thanks so much for dialing it up. Happy to be with you. My name is Jake Riepma, host of Dolphins Today. And as the Dolphins are in the midst of their search for their next defensive coordinator, it seems like there's something new developing each and every day. And anytime there's somebody with the last name Shula involved in the interview process, yes, that's exciting. It's exciting news. And the latest development in the Dolphins' search for their newest defensive coordinator is that Chris Shula, the linebackers coach for the Los Angeles Rams currently, has interviewed for the Dolphins defensive coordinator position. And oh, yes, we all recognize that last name. He is the grandson of the legend Don Shula himself. And of course, his father coached for the Cincinnati Bengals in the 90s. But Chris Shula is added to the list of potential defensive coordinator replacements. And you know, when the Dolphins do make that final decision of who their next defensive coordinator will be, I'll be tweeting all about it or using the X, whatever you want to call it now. Had a lot of fun meeting and following back everybody that's followed me on X. So, hey, let's do the same thing we did a couple of weeks ago. I'm following back the next 20 people that follow me on Twitter at Jake_Riepma, because when Dolphins news happens, I'm tweeting about it. And even if there's not news, we're always discussing the aqua and orange. So follow me on Twitter, and I'll follow you back. The next 20 to do so, guaranteed follow back, because I love taking the aqua and orange to the Twitter airwaves and discussing everything about the Miami Dolphins on X. Now, as the defensive coordinator search continues, Chris Shula is the latest candidate to interview. And as we've discussed at length in previous episodes of Dolphins Today, there are a lot of really valid candidates. And here's the official announcement from Tom Pelissero of NFL Network. The Dolphins are interviewing Chris Shula, grandson of legendary coach Don Shula, for their defensive coordinator job today. Per source, Chris Shula has spent the past 7 seasons as an assistant with the Rams and most recently as a pass rush coordinator and linebackers coach. So when you look at Chris Shula's body of work as an assistant coach in the NFL, it began back in 2017 when he was the linebackers coach for the Rams under Sean McVay. Now, jump down to the bottom portion. Sean McVay and Chris Shula were college teammates at Miami University out of Ohio. Chris Shula played linebacker in college and has continued in the coaching ranks and was a part of that 2022 Super Bowl winning Rams staff, with Sean McVay leading the way there. And yes, we know this one, the grandson of the Hall of Famer and most winningest coach, Don Shula, as well as the son of Bengals head coach David Shula, who led the Bengals from 92 to 96. So, football family, football guy, played college football, has coached on a Super Bowl winning team as an assistant coach, but has not made the jump up to coordinator yet. Now, this is from several years ago when Sean McVay was asked about Chris Shula, and you would reckon not much has changed. But again, I want to provide the context that this is, in fact, from 2022. But Sean McVay talked about Chris Shula, saying he truly sees the game through an all-22 perspective, knowing the defense, but also the offensive side of the ball. How are teams trying to really attack the different coverage, counters, front structures in the run game? I've been just so grateful to work side by side with Chris since we got here. Now, also, to provide some context, McVay and Shula were friends in college, so obviously he's going to have glowing remarks about his buddy. But again, you take into everything into that consideration: football family, legendary Dolphins coach, grandson, and you've got a lot of pieces that make a lot of sense for Chris Shula to be the next defensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins. So I ask you, do you want Chris Shula to be the next Dolphins defensive coordinator? Let me know down in the comments. If you're all in on it, type Y for yes. You think, hey, no, there's some better candidates out there, go ahead and type N for no. I want to thank everybody that's subscribed as of recent weeks. We continue to grow, and we're not done yet. Let's get to 56,000 subscribers. That sounds good to say out loud, and I know we can get it. We're so close at 55,494, so we're over, so close. We are so close to being to that 56,000 mark. Help us get there. We appreciate everybody that has subscribed, because when Dolphin news happens, we've got you covered. Now, coming up, we're going to continue to dive into this defensive coordinator search, as well as some Dolphins news on the back half of this video, so make sure you stick around for that. But first, a salute to today's proud presenting sponsor, America's #1 meal delivery service, and that is Factor. Factor is here to help you get started on your resolutions and, better yet, stick with them, because here we are already into February, and maybe you need a little boost. You need a little kickstart in that promise you made yourself at the turn of the calendar that you were going to make choices that lead to success, and that's where Factor comes in with their ready-to-eat meal delivery service that takes the stress out of meal planning and sets you up for success in 2024. So skip the grocery stores, skip the prep work, and skip the cooking fatigue. That's right, say goodbye to it all, and instead get chef-crafted, fresh, never frozen, dietitian-approved meals delivered right to your door. And hey, how about 35 meals to choose from per week? That's a lot. The variety is the spice of life. You know I love the Chipotle pork chop. That's my #1. The tomato basil chicken, delicious as well. And hey, they even got options like keto, calorie smart, vegan, veggie, and so much more. And oh yeah, don't forget about the 55 weekly add-ons as well. The smoothies sometimes are slept on, but I'm telling you, they're delicious, especially in the morning. A little grab and go action there. Either way, you'll have a ton of nutritious and flavorful options to kickstart those resolutions and to help you stick to it as we enter the month of February. So head to factormeals.com/FinSchat50 and use code FinSchat50 to get 50% off. Let me say it a little slower, because this is 50% off we're talking about, people. Factormeals.com/FinSchat50 and use code FinSchat50 for 55% off. And oh yeah, we love you and we care about you, so that link's going right in the description and comments of today's video. We make it easy on you. You just click that link, factormeals.com, use that promo code FinSchat50 for 50% off. And after Chris Shula is added to the list of candidates that have been interviewed by the Miami Dolphins, we got to once again go through and rank the list of defensive coordinator candidates. So the most up-to-date one includes the likes of Brandon Staley, Anthony Campanile, the linebackers coach Ryan Slowik, Bobby Babich interviewed but already accepted the Bills defensive coordinator job. You've got Leslie Frazier, who also interviewed for the job, Chris Kiffin, the linebackers coach from the Texans, Anthony Weaver, the defensive line associate head coach for the Ravens. Obviously, we've seen some turnover and changing on that staff. So you add to Chris Shula as well with those candidates, and it's time to put together my final four. That's right. How about a little basketball terminology for you? We're not quite to March Madness yet, but I'm giving you my final four of my candidates for the Dolphins defensive coordinator job. And #1 on the list is Brandon Staley. Now, this is kind of a wild card because he's also interviewed for the open Rams defensive coordinating job. And we know that he was the Chargers head coach from 2021 to 2023. But in 2020, leading that Rams defense, he was an incredible defensive coordinator, got the most out of that Rams defense, and really helped propel him in his quest to be a head coach. He ultimately was the head coach for the Chargers from 2021 to 2023. And oh yeah, he coached guys like Jalen Ramsey and has the same agent as Mike McDaniel. So there's a lot of factors here that would suggest Brandon Staley might be the guy for the job. But again, he has also interviewed for the Rams defensive coordinating job. When you look at the success he had in 2020, there's obvious reasons why the Rams want him as their defensive coordinator. They were first in total defense that year, first in passing yards allowed, first in passing touchdowns allowed, and third in rushing yards allowed, as well as sixth in rushing touchdowns allowed. So if you're the Rams staff, you're thinking, hey, let's bring that guy back. Let's run that 2020 defense back. So Brandon Staley is a hot commodity for the defensive coordinating position for both the Dolphins and the Los Angeles Rams. So he's #1 on my list, but maybe he says no. That said, let's take a look at #2, because I love the idea of an internal hire, especially when you think about the culture that Mike McDaniel has built with this team. Anthony Campanile checks those boxes as an internal hire that already has the players running through a brick wall for him. Think back to that Hard Knocks episode where he gave a great speech and talked about the universal language of whoop ass. I mean, that's a guy you can play for. Anthony Campanile also interviewed for that Dolphins defensive coordinating job a year ago, so obviously Miami and the front office thought highly enough of him to give him an interview last year, even though they went with Vic Fangio. And we see now that that probably wasn't the best decision and the wealth of experience that Campanile brings, linebackers coach for the Dolphins since 2020. So he has that continuity with the team, with the organization, also has experience at the collegiate level with Michigan, Boston College, and Rutgers. So Campanile, very much on my list, would be an awesome pick, and I think he's earned this opportunity. When you think of him interviewing for the defensive coordinating job a year ago, not getting it, staying with the Dolphins, and really elevating his level of intensity for the players and being that guy that the players can relate to. Because remember when Vic Fangio parted ways? There's all the players subtweeting him, and there's all this information that has come out of how players didn't like playing for Vic Fangio in Miami. So if you get a guy like Campanile that can get in the players' world, that can relate to him and get the most out of those players, ultimately, that's a huge component of being a successful coordinator in the National Football League, and I think Campanile checks those boxes. Now, a third choice, and I hate to even say a third choice, but another hire that would satisfy me as a Dolphins fan would be another internal hire, and that's Ryan Slowik. Outside linebackers coach for the Dolphins, has spent the last 2 seasons with Miami, and has a wealth of experience in the NFL dating back to 2015 when he was a member of the New York Jets coaching staff. Also spent time with the Browns coaching outside linebackers in 2016. And in between those stints, he spent some time at the collegiate ranks with the Tennessee Volunteers as the defensive analyst in 2017. And so again, it's a guy that's been with this staff, built up that continuity with Mike McDaniel, with the organization, with the players, and I think there's tremendous value in that. Now, if I were to compare Campanile and Slowik, both guys coach linebackers, outside linebackers coach for Slowik, inside linebackers for Campanile, and I think we just saw more of the leadership mentality from Campanile on those Hard Knocks episodes. I might give him the slight edge, but again, I'm good with either one of these internal hires. Now, I want to know what you think. Pick a defensive coordinator for me. You got Brandon Staley, very impressive resume from top to bottom, a proven defensive coordinator in this league. Anthony Campanile, impressive, cohesive experience with the Miami Dolphins, but hasn't been a coordinator in the NFL yet. The same with Ryan Slowik. So let me know down in the comments. Type BS for Brandon Staley, AC for Anthony Campanile, and RS for Ryan Slowik. Now, I promised 4 of my final 4, and we opened with Chris Shula, so you know I got to put him on there as well. And maybe you can accuse me of just saying, hey, Riepma, you're just going with the last name here. And there might be some truth to that because Chris Shula has not been a defensive coordinator in the NFL yet, but his father was a head coach in the NFL, and his grandfather was the greatest coach of all time, Don Shula. And I just think that would be a fitting next chapter for Chris Shula. And maybe he makes his mark on the NFL coaching world as the defensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins. That would be an awesome story. But I will say this, I like Staley, Campanile, and Slowik ahead of Chris Shula. But again, I promised a Final Four list, so I'll put him on there. But he's a little bit distant as far as my choices. But to level with you, if any of these 4 are hired, I would be excited about the direction of the Miami Dolphins organization. And that's not to take away from the other candidates, because I think there are some really impressive candidates on there. Anthony Weaver, for one. Look at the success of the Ravens defense. I think it's important for the Dolphins to get this hire right, but ultimately it's going to be about hiring the defensive coordinator that brings out the best in the players. Mike McDaniel is a player's coach. He's a new school guy. Obviously, Vic Fangio was way too old school for Mike McDaniel and for the players. They didn't like playing for him. Jalen Ramsey, Javon Holland, the list really goes on about defensive players that didn't like playing for Vic Fangio. So this time around, you got to find a guy that is able to relate to players and get the most out of their talents. Now, let's turn our attention to some newsworthy as we close out today's show of Dolphins Today. The Sporting News released their postseason awards, and the Miami Dolphins were well represented, starting with the Offensive Player of the Year, Tyreek Hill for the Miami Dolphins. Congratulations to the Cheetah. And I know I speak for every single Dolphins fan when I say this was the obvious choice. Of course, he was the Offensive Player of the Year, but shout out to Tyreek Hill. Congratulations on a tremendous season. Now, the Comeback Player of the Year, that's right, Tua Tagovailoa, number 1 on the field and number 1 in our heart, earns the Sporting News Comeback Player of the Year. And this was a very hotly contested award. A lot of really good candidates, but I think when you look at where Tua was a year ago compared to the season he had in 2023, playing all 17 games, leading the NFL in passing yards, it makes a lot of sense that he is the comeback player of the year, according to the Sporting News. So do it now. Show some love to our guys, Tua Tagovailoa and Tyreek Hill, in the comments. It's real simple. Just let me know that you're congratulating them with that trophy emoji. Type the trophy emoji to salute Tyreek Hill and Tua Tagovailoa on their postseason awards. Now, I mentioned that I'm in a very generous giving mood, and why wouldn't I be? Because I appreciate everybody subscribing to Dolphins Today, and I love taking the conversation to Twitter. So the next 20 people that follow me on Twitter, at Jake_Riepma, I'm following you back because I love to expand the community from the YouTube to the Twitter. That's what it's all about here on Dolphins Today. We are one big family, one big community, and thanks so much for tuning in today. And hey, how about a salute and shout out to our producer today, Jack Lauderay, on the ones and twos. Couldn't do it without him. I appreciate everything you do for this program. And until next time, have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, day, night, whatever on Dolphins Today.